All right, y'all, so welcome back. Listen, man, we about to dive into some more conspiracy theories and unexplained mysteries. This video here is titled 6 Most Terrifying Creatures Ever Discovered by Soldiers. All right, so we're going to get into it. If you're new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, join the family, and hit that like button for more content. Let's check it out.
On Halloween night of 1980, something worthy of Stephen King's pen happened at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling in Washington, D.C. One of the security officers was found unconscious, and not just anywhere, but in the cockpit of an old fighter jet installed as a monument. Notably, the man couldn't remember how he got there. The last thing left in his memory was a mysterious glow that emanated from the cockpit and seemed to beckon him. The base guard also claimed to have felt an icy touch. This is just one of many mysterious phenomena that keep haunting soldiers and participants in armed conflicts worldwide. In this video, I'll tell you, what do Nazis and werewolves have in common? How did the CIA create ghosts? And finally, why do paranormal phenomena tend to haunt soldiers?
How did I know the CIA was going to be involved, bro? We just can't escape that, can we?
The year 1914, the First World War. With the last of your strength, your squad is holding back the superior German troops. Suddenly, the commander orders to take up combat duty in no man's land, separating the two armies. All your fellow soldiers consider it unlucky because it's so easy to be targeted by enemy bullets in open terrain. But that night, that piece of land proved to be really cursed. At first, you're alarmed by the roar from afar. You tell your comrade to keep his gun ready, but he won't need it anymore.
How many of y'all would be questioning, why were we sent here? Why were we sent here out in the open for just anyone to pick us off like that? Yeah, I'd have had a lot of questions. I'd have did my job, but I'd have had a lot of questions.
Comrade to keep his gun ready, but he won't need it anymore. In a second, you hear a terrible, high-pitched screaming. You shoot in the air to scare off the attackers, but it looks like the enemy just vanished into the darkness. Your comrade is dying in your arms from horrific lacerations to his neck. It seems like an unknown, terrifying beast has mauled him. Rumors quickly spread around the military unit. They say the poor fellow fell victim to the hellhound of Mons, a giant rabid dog that kills only British soldiers. In 1919, a Canadian veteran, Captain F.J. Newhouse, published the Chronicle describing the gruesome deaths of the British military from the fangs of a demonic beast. All the murders took place in no man's land. After digging through the German archives, Newhouse offered his explanation for the paranormal phenomena. According to him, at that time, German scientist Dr. Gottlieb Hochmuller tried to create a new weapon capable of turning the tide of the war in favor of Germany. He allegedly spent much time roaming the psychiatric hospitals until he finally found a patient who was absolutely frantic with hatred for England. Then he extracted the madman's brain and transplanted it into a Caucasian shepherd dog. Later, the hybrid dog was released to hunt British soldiers near the city of Mons. That sounds totally insane. However,
how far-fetched does this sound to y'all? To be honest with you, I can see them doing this. I can see anyone doing this to try to gain an advantage. To be honest with you, yeah, I can really see them doing this and trying this. Now, the question is whether or not it was a success. So now I got to do a little digging because that's the first time I ever heard of, what do they call it, Mons or something Mons? Yeah, I got to look that up.
The city of Mons. That sounds totally insane.
It does.
However,
but
decades later, it turned out that even this military horror story has some truth. From the very beginning of the First World War, the German government indeed set out to create a fundamentally new biological weapon. And one of the experiments was definitely successful. Don't worry, I bet you've already seen that bioweapon because I'm talking about German shepherds. German cynologists tried to train dogs of this breed to obey killer commands near the city of Mons. Apparently, several animals really succumbed to the suggestions and bit some British soldiers. Frightened to death, they mistook the dogs for a ghoul. So maybe that incident with the security officer who saw the otherworldly light in the old fighter jet cockpit could also be explained by a secret military experiment. The investigation revealed that the glow could not have been caused by any equipment, as all the electronics were removed from the memorial aircraft long before the accident. It was literally an iron ingot, and it's unclear what could be tested by the glow experiment. So, did the guard actually see something anomalous on board? This is supported by other accounts of strange incidents during the war. In 1988, at the U.S. Hahn Air Base located in Morbach, Germany, the alarm went off in one of the main halls. There was an intruder. A short time later, a security policeman saw a silhouette moving on two legs across the hall. Although it was not a human, but a giant, shaggy, wolf-like creature. The beast was about 2.5 meters tall. Having noticed the commotion, it fled into the street and jumped over a 10-meter fence with apparent ease. Shortly after that, a military working dog was brought to the area. However, it just whined and failed to pick up the trail. But not only the military saw something unusual. That evening, police received numerous reports from local residents. They were also terrified by a creepy half-person, half-dog. Unlike the American soldiers who didn't know the local legends, the townspeople had a ready-made explanation.
And see, this is why I get frustrated sometimes with people who be like, oh, these Bigfoot sightings and different things. We don't know what we seeing out here in the woods. It could be Bigfoot, it could not be. It could be some scientific experiment gone wrong that escaped, that they were working on trying to use as a weapon to gain advantage in war. Like, you don't know. And who's to say if it did escape, they were doing some type of scientific experiment on something, trying to create this weapon, and it got loose? Do you think they would tell us? No, they try to cover it up and bury it. Bury the files, destroy the files, and we'll never even know. So now we're seeing these sightings of different things, and you're like, what is that? That ain't real. It could be. Now, how does it stay so evasive? That's another question within itself. That's a whole nother conversation. We don't know. But if you sitting here honestly thinking that these experiments and different things aren't taking place, then, man, it's like I said before, bro, it's a bridge in Brooklyn I could sell you. You know what I mean? Just send me your Cash App.
In 1804, at the beginning of the Napoleonic Wars, a soldier named Thomas Johannes Baptist Schweitzer, who fought near Moscow, decided to flee to the west. On his way, he met several more deserters. Soon, they all reached the town of Morbach in Germany, where they decided to rob one of the isolated farmhouses. But to do that, Schweitzer had to shoot the farmer and several of his sons. An elderly woman, their mother, heard the noise and went out. The deserter immediately opened fire, but the woman managed to curse him before she died. From that moment on, Schweitzer turned into a rabid wolf at each full moon so that everyone could see what a beast he had become. The deserter's comrades just laughed at this, but on the very next full moon night, one of them was found dead in a field with fang marks on his neck. Soon, people increasingly began to disappear in Morbach. To ward off the ghoul, the locals erected a shrine in the main square where a candle had to burn continually. According to the legend, as long as the candle was lit, the werewolf would not return. And by a strange coincidence, on that evening of 1988, when a stranger invaded the Morbach base, the candle went out for the first time in many years. The American soldiers, of course, brushed off the local legend, but ultimately they never found any other explanation for the incident. However, skeptics prefer to blame all mysterious military-related incidents on the same quite realistic reason. The year 1948, 2 years before, the U.S. gave the Philippines independence, but de facto, the Philippine government is still pushed around by the U.S. authorities. You're one of the hooks who participated in the Hukbalahap rebellion, and you want to rid your country of American influence more than anything. You've already managed to get your hands on a decent arsenal, but before a big anti-government protest, you first need to hide the weapons in the woods. And the night is the perfect cover. In the dark, other rebels whistle a cheerful tune until suddenly, a heart-rending scream pierces the air. One of your gang members has been caught. The commander orders you to run away. None of the hooks should wind up in enemy hands. But something seems really off. You don't hear American boots pounding. You hear only twigs crunching in the woods. Who can possibly walk like that? Only beasts or creepy creatures you heard about as a child. But, of course, you don't believe in anything like that. But in the morning, you find a deceased person. And to your horror, there's almost no blood left in his body, and there are 2 red marks on his neck, as if from fangs. Filipinos have long believed in aswang, a long-tongued, razor-toothed vampire. And during the anti-American riot, the population buzzed with allegations that it was aswang who chased the hooks. Similar incidents kept happening until 1954, when the rebellion collapsed, not least because of the superstitious fear instilled in the locals. Did otherworldly forces really go hunting in the jungle? And if so, why did they start helping the Americans? That information was known by Edward Lansdale, a U.S. Air Force Major General. He's the one who unleashed the aswang. To be more precise, he studied Filipino folklore to think over intimidation tactics to frighten the hooks. The entire operation was carried out.
That's what I was sitting here pondering. Was that an intimidation tactic on their part?
By the CIA. They wandered through the woods at night, kidnapping Filipinos and mutilating them as if it was done by vampires. The aswang attacks turned out to be one big setup. But what about the glow in the fighter jet? As you may recall, this incident occurred in the middle of Halloween night when teenagers were wandering around the base in spooky costumes. Could it be that the guard just got pranked by them? But did they really want to play a trick so much that they snuck into a guarded military base, scared an armed person so much that he passed out, and dragged him into the cockpit? It looks like too much of a hassle. In addition, someone's staging can explain only a fraction of the strange cases in the war. February of 1970, the height of the Vietnam War. Your partisan detachment fighting the Americans stopped for an evening rest in the jungle. However, as soon as you close your eyes, the forest around you fills up with heart-rending cries, and they don't seem to be produced by animals at all. After all, you can clearly distinguish human speech. A multitude of male voices are screaming in your native Vietnamese that they've gone to hell. They're asking you not to repeat their mistakes. Children's voices are begging you to return home because otherwise they'll never be born. It seems as if an invisible wall between the worlds has fallen, and now the souls of the dead speak to you directly. And it's perfectly aligned with local beliefs. The Vietnamese believed that the souls of those who couldn't be buried with honors turned into Ma Lai, cursed spirits causing drought and disease. So the Vietnamese partisans thought they had heard them that night and decided to return to their villages out of harm's way. The American scouts were chuffed to observe all that because they once again managed to pull off the Philippine trick. All the so-called otherworldly voices were initially recorded on tape and played over speakers placed in the jungle. The Americans just had to turn the tape recordings on at the right time. Yet the captured partisans later claimed to have heard Ma Lai's voices not only in the jungle, but also in extremely hard-to-reach rocky areas the Americans didn't even know of. Nowadays, the Pentagon's non-lethal weapons lab is creating a device able to do something similar. It can generate sound at a distance of up to 30 kilometers due to something called a laser-induced plasma effect. Basically, scientists imperceptibly saturate the air somewhere far away with energy so that it starts making sounds.
Stop, or we will be forced to fire upon you.
But during the Vietnam War, such technologies hadn't been invented yet. And
don't nobody ever tell me any more about the capabilities or what we don't possess and different things like that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you say, the government would never, or this entity would never do that. They don't have the capabilities. You don't know what we have or what we're capable of doing. And what extent will they go to cover something up or hide it or win at all costs and sacrifice at all costs? Don't say nothing else to me about that, bro. Are you seeing some of the things now? This is all alleged. I don't have the proof. I'm just going based upon what I'm seeing right now. But just let your imagination wander.
The Americans blamed the evidence of moans in remote areas where they didn't even place any speakers on the lies of the captured Vietnamese and inaccurate translations. But is this fair? What if the U.S. took credit for the accomplishments of supernatural forces and soldiers are indeed occasionally haunted by extraterrestrial phenomena? The year 1966, the same Vietnam War, but now you're on the side of the Americans. Your detachment is stationed in a strategically important area known as Hill 868. Only a few know the coordinates of this location. One of your fellow soldiers notes a fuss in the bushes, but as soon as you focus on listening to the sounds, they subside. It looks like the camp is surrounded by Vietnamese partisans. You hear the commander's voice on the walkie-talkie. He forbids you to shoot to avoid giving your position away. Soon, patrollers report that the camp is indeed surrounded, although not by partisans, but by...
That's got to be one of the scariest feelings in the world. You can't even shoot because you don't want to give up your location of where you're at. So it's kind of like you just a sitting duck in that moment.
Group of enormous human-like creatures completely covered with red fur. You ask the commander for permission to open fire, but he's unwilling to waste shells on some animals. Instead, you try to repel them by throwing stones. The mysterious beasts respond in the same way, and they're really well aimed. A stone breaks the skull of one of your comrades, and someone finally opens fire in revenge. You hear the bone-chilling howling, and then the animals vanish into the jungle as suddenly as they appeared. There's only one dead animal left on the ground, but when you bring the captain to look at it, you suddenly find it gone. And there's not a...
Why do I feel like they in a Predator movie?
Single blood drop left on the grass. During the Vietnam War, many American units independently reported attacks by 3-meter-tall humanoid monkeys covered with long red hair. But nobody believed the soldiers at the main headquarters because they couldn't provide any confirmation of their words. Witnesses claimed that the weird animals carried away not only their dead relatives, but also entire layers of earth drenched with their blood. In a later investigation, paranormal expert John Tenney suggested that all those soldiers might have seen giant beasts due to banal fatigue. But in this case, how can we explain the giant footprint found in the jungle in 1974 by Va Quy, a Vietnamese zoologist and professor at the Vietnam National University?
I bet they was hoping we didn't find that.
It was very similar to a human footprint, but it measured at least 40 centimeters in length, which is 10 centimeters more than the average male foot. Some researchers also tried to explain the Halloween story with the fighter jet by the base guard's fatigue. But if he was really overtired, it seems more likely that he would have fallen asleep right where he was instead of climbing to open the cockpit, which had been tightly closed for a number of years. Sounds like someone indeed helped him, doesn't it? It had to be someone strong. The year 2002, the Afghan War. You're one of the members of the U.S. Special Forces Group. Your task is to scout the situation in one of the most remote mountain areas. After all, a whole detachment of your fellow soldiers didn't return from there a week ago. Footprints lead you to the entrance to a large cave. Military equipment fragments are scattered around. Holding your weapons ready, you're about to enter the cave when suddenly, red-haired 4.5-meter high giant jumps out of it. The creature immediately attacks you with a spear. Unbelievably, it takes your unit 30 seconds of continuous fire to knock the giant down, even though the Special Forces were armed with M4 carbines and Barrett M107 sniper rifles. This arsenal can take down a small army. As for the giant defeated at the cave, the American command refused to believe in it. Finally, the Special Forces managed to convince the officers to send a helicopter to evacuate the mysterious creature. Its pilot was sure that his fellow servicemen exaggerated everything. But when he arrived at the site, he confirmed that the so-called Giant of Kandahar was real. With the greatest of difficulty, they put the beast in a helicopter, after which each expedition member was forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. And all the information about this case, as well as the examination results, were classified. Were the military afraid to open...
I'm starting to hate they ever came up with making people sign NDAs, man. Imagine how much more stuff we would know about.
Admit that they had encountered something completely alien. But the Giant of Kandahar at least looked like a human. The year 1944, the Second World War. You're one of the crew members of a British naval trawler. You finally have an idle moment, so you decide to enjoy fishing from the deck. But suddenly, in the water just a few meters away from you, a sinister green circle lights up. The water's surface starts bubbling, and soon a black body, measuring around 50 meters long, rises from the abyss. It's bigger than your vessel, and then you realize that the green circle is the sea monster's eye. You're watching in horror as the squid-like monster tries to wrap its tentacles around the trawler, but one of them hits the ship's propeller. The wounded monster retreats. A few minutes later, the sea is in a state of total calm again. For many years, such stories of mythical krakens attacking military vessels were considered just tales until 2004. Researchers from the National Science Museum of Japan and the Ogasawara Whale Watching Association began to verify them. As a result, they managed to discover a new squid species that can grow up to a few dozen meters in length. However, what attracts them to warships is still unknown. Thus, the glow in the fighter jet on Halloween night of 1980 might have come from something unknown to science, a bioluminescent beast. But what about the irresistible, alluring power of that light and the icy touch mentioned by the base guard? That sounds like those stories about encounters with non-terrestrial beings. The year 1982. The Soviet Union's military base on Lake Baikal. You're a Navy diver. Along with 6 fellow soldiers, you begin a planned training dive, but the water around you suddenly becomes very thick. After making sure there's nothing wrong with your equipment, you continue to dive. When suddenly, at a depth of 50 meters, you notice strange silhouettes. As you swim closer, you see humanoid creatures covered in unidentifiable silvery material. However, they don't have scuba gear or any other diving equipment on. You and your comrades immediately rise to the surface and report to management about what you've seen, but your superior officers flatly refuse to believe you and demand proof. They're actually ordering you to capture one of the mysterious glowing humanoids.
So you mean to tell me they let me out alive? Even if, let's just say if this is true, right? I discover them. They let me out alive. You think I'm going back in there where there's a chance that this time they might not be so generous? What did you tell your officer? Respectfully, sir, no, I'm not going back out there. You crazy. No.
Begin the second dive and meet a group of humanoids again. But when one of your fellow officers tries to drop a big net on the nearest creature, all your organs suddenly contract. That's one of the humanoids shooting some waves at you from a mysterious device. Before losing consciousness, you see the protective glass cracking in front of your eyes. When all 7 scuba divers didn't return from the dive at the appointed time, the command of the Soviet military base began to sound the alarm. Eventually, a few kilometers from the dive site, the divers were washed ashore with broken scuba gear. It looked like some force had rumpled the poor men and pushed them out of the water. 3 of the 7 victims died of decompression disease, but all material...
They should have never went back out there, man. This is when we send some type of device or camera or something down there. We don't send our people. They shouldn't have been down there.
Related to the incident were immediately classified. Moreover, it turned out that it wasn't even the first such occasion. A former Soviet Navy officer named Vladimir Azhaja claimed that long before that incident with the scuba divers, the military command not only knew about strange humanoids in the Baikal waters, but also tried to obtain their mysterious weapons. But what are these paranormal creatures? In the same year, 1982, 3 local residents decided to go fishing on Lake Baikal. Late in the evening, the fishermen noticed an unusual glow in the sky and a mysterious object moving in their direction. As if spellbound, the men couldn't take their eyes off of it. But when the object came within roughly 50 meters of the fishermen, they felt a severe burning sensation in their eyes and rushed away. And in 1997...
We're all going to be like Bird Box. We're going to be covering our eyes, not trying to look at it, trying to go about our business. That's where we headed, bro.
A group of tourists captured a mysterious, luminous object over Lake Baikal. Experts never managed to explain what it was. However, the most exciting part is that the tourists also called this glow alluring and felt the enigmatic icy chill during the incident. Did they encounter the same phenomenon as the guard at the military base? I mean, aliens who set up their military bases in secluded corners of our Earth for unknown purposes. All of this would sound like science fiction, if not for the fact that in the course of over 20 years, U.S. military pilots have regularly detected unidentified flying objects with incredible speeds and maneuverability. Some of them fly out of the sea as if their base is in there somewhere. The Pentagon has declassified several such records, and its experts have officially admitted they have no idea what it is. But if those creatures were from another world, why did they choose to appear in front of the eyes of the military? Was it supposed to intimidate and show that resistance is useless? What What do you think?
Basically, just telling us we can't do nothing about it. Yeah, it's sort of like a pissing contest right now. And we're losing. They're showing us they're faster. Technology possibly even better than ours, way better, off the charts. And I think that's what it is. But man, what do you feel, or how do you feel about some of this stuff that was spoken about in this video? Part of you wants, and I'm gonna tell you how you feel. Part of you wants to say, man, this ain't no way this stuff is possible. But the other half of you, listen to that half. The half that's saying, this could be a possibility, man. This could be possibly true. Study that. Pay attention to that. Lean into that. See where it takes you. That's all I'm saying. Y'all get at me in the comment section, man, and let me know what you thought of this video. Very, very interesting and intriguing. It's your boy L. Till the next one, I'm gone, man. Peace.